Today, we're here with Jenny Taft. She grew up in a home surrounded by sports and competitive athletes. During her high school years, she lettered in hockey, lacrosse, and tennis. And then she went on to Boston University as a D1 lacrosse player. From there, she got her degree in broadcast journalism and proceeded to enter the world of broadcast journalism as a Fox Sports North girl, social media reporter for Minnesota Wild and University of Minnesota's men's hockey. In 2013, she auditioned and was hired at the onset of FS1 Network as an update anchor, quickly moving forward in her career, taking on duties as a track reporter for 2013 Supercross events, different National Hockey League teams during the 2014 Stanley Cup playoffs, and as a site reporter for the Major League Baseball games. She also covered the 2015 FIFA Women's World Cup in Canada, and then proceeded to do college football in 2014. She quickly moved through the ranks, working alongside Johnson and Klatt as the lead college football reporter for Fox and FS1. And from there, she entered her current role as a moderator for FS1's Skip and Shannon Undisputed. Ooh. So, as a female college athlete, did you ever notice any obstacles that you needed to overcome that were not present for male athletes?
Well, first of all, lovely introduction, although it's cutting out a little bit. So I didn't hear you might have to re-ask the question, but when you listed off everything, I was like, wow, I can't believe it's one, been that long since I've been in LA. And two, just how lucky I've been to work with so many people and sports and experiences, and that put it all in perspective. So thank you for that. But yes, ask it one more time. It was weird. It could be my Wi-Fi, but hopefully it'll stay solid for us.
So as a female college athlete, did you ever notice any obstacles that you needed to overcome that weren't present for the male athletes?
So I was thinking a lot about this because I know we were chatting just about questions and storylines, and it's so interesting because I know there have been obstacles, and probably more so in my career where you're a female working among mostly men, right? I mean, sports are predominantly, men, but at the same time, there's so many more women nowadays that I don't even think about it. And I was thinking back to my college days, and at BU, I never really felt that way. And I think so much of my success in this world, working in sports, working among men, is because from a very, very young age, I was encouraged from my family to pursue sports, but also that it was no different for me versus my brother, who also was a really great athlete. And I was older, so I think it was unique that it came first. But growing up in Minnesota, you mentioned I played ice hockey, and, people always say, oh, did you play with the boys? And honestly, I didn't have to, because in Minnesota, hockey is such a popular sport that I was skating with an all-girls team at U12. So I never had this sense that it was different for me as a girl versus a boy. And while I think playing with the boys is pretty amazing, and so many women have done that and had success, and I think it of course creates a toughness. I've skated in a few games, ironically, as an adult in LA and with all guys. And when you're like, where am I supposed to change? Like, what? I can't go to the locker room. And so I'm like getting ready in the bathroom. So I never had that as a kid. Like, I never felt like because I was a girl, I was different, or because I was a girl, I wouldn't have the same opportunities. And my parents were super supportive and athletes, but it was never about being a girl. I mean, I just never felt limited in what I could accomplish. And I do think that's a lot because of my parents, and because of I was driven to be an athlete. And while as I got older, realized I'm probably not going to be a professional athlete. Like, I was a good athlete, but I was on the bench a lot at BU. Like, I had realistic expectations, but for whatever reason, that confidence of playing sports my whole life gave me the confidence that I could work in sports as a female among the men. It never dawned on me as an issue that I would be working with men all the time. I mean, my whole crew this college football season, it was unique because I'm pregnant, and that's a new kind of stage in my life, and I didn't know how they would react. And it was actually lovely. Like, they were so protective. And Gus Johnson, who you mentioned, he'd always say, Jenny, how's Gigi doing? Like, are you sitting down enough during the game? I'm like, Gus, I'm not sitting. It's a game. Like, I can't sit. He's like, well, just make sure you sit at halftime. Like, just the sweetest little moments where they were really looking out for me. That's a side tangent. But point being, in college, I definitely just went a lot of places there. I just really didn't feel it. And it's because of the way I grew up. I think BU offered the women the same opportunities as the men in so many ways. I mean, sure, there's going to be differences between some of the BU hockey program, like they had their own weight room and, we were working out with other teams, but I also understood that the BU hockey team was bringing in the majority of the revenue, and their weight room was because of donors. And I think that's a realistic thing to understand the differences there. And it never fazed me. So overall, it was a great experience at BU, and it really did help me to start the journey of working in sports.
That's awesome. I wanted to play hockey as a kid and was told I couldn't because there was no place on the team for a girl. I'm like, okay.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's so
ran around with the kids anyway.
Yeah. Like I laugh because I love Minnesota and I love the way I grew up now, having left it, and nothing against LA. And there's girls playing here. My husband is coaching, and there's young girls who are on the boys team, which is great. And they hold their own, but I never saw it as a difference because we just had the opportunity and we were really good, and it was all my friends together. So it was such a cool thing to experience. And I would love to give that to my kids one day, and my daughter. I mean, who knows where we'll end up living, but I never felt any different. And that's of course how I'd want to raise my kids.
Awesome. What sparked your desire to invest in a career in sports broadcasting and journalism?
I would say as well, from a young age, I loved being in front of the camera or just kind of performing, which I think is kind of goes both ways with sports. Like there's a performance angle, of course, and then the energy of a live event. I also dabbled in theater, and I don't sing, but thought I could, somehow still be the lead of a musical when I had a horrible voice and I was still always in the backup. I'm like, I wonder why I'm in the back. This is such a bummer. But I did a couple plays and I loved the being on and the performing. So I very much enjoyed the sports and the performing side. And then I did random little small commercials as a kid, just because I always begged my parents to take me to auditions. And I was never afraid of that environment. And I think that kind of stemmed the sports, the connection to it. If I love sports this much, I love being in front of the camera. And I was reading a teleprompter for these commercials, and it always came easy to me. It was never a nerve-wracking thing, right? I mean, there's always nerves, but it was very comfortable for me. So when I was starting to look at colleges, I knew I wanted to play a sport, but I also knew if they had a journalism school, that would be a plus. And a couple smaller schools didn't have that. And you don't necessarily need it. I mean, I know so many women and men in this industry who were English majors, who write well, who can tell a story, right? I don't think you need the TV, but for me, BU had that. And I loved it. I loved the BU TV and putting stories together and watching old clips. They weren't that good. Some of my early reports, I felt great about them. But BU had that. And then I was able to walk on the lacrosse team. So I was able to kind of fulfill both of those dreams. And I think having the 4 years playing lacrosse gave me a perspective to the commitment that I understand in a way with these athletes that I interviewed for college football. It's just a common ground. And it's not to say that you have to have played a D1 sport to relate to these players, like not at all. But I do think it helps me in terms of knowing the expectations and what's being expected. I'm always blown away by college football players who are sitting down and doing interviews with me, or zooming with me on the phone, or zooming about the game and being asked to answer all these questions. I mean, as a lacrosse player, I was never interviewed by the media. Like my responsibilities were to my team and school, but we expect these 18-year-olds to have it all together and be so great and polished at a young age. It really does always blow me away. So I think having that perspective really has helped me as a reporter too.
That's interesting. I actually assumed that you went through the whole recruitment process for lacrosse, but to find out you were a walk-on is really interesting. Do you think that even because you went through the process slightly differently, that gives you a different perspective on things?
Maybe a little bit. I have a soft spot for walk-on stories, and my colleague Joel Klatt also, who is the best of the best in this world. I think he's just one of the brightest football minds. He's so good. He was a walk-on. So we both kind of joke about these walk-on stories because I think we have a similar mentality where it's like you always had to prove yourself. I mean, I actually got cut from the lacrosse team after trying out. The coach emailed me and she was like, "You're great. I see potential, but you're just not there yet." And Minnesota lacrosse was so much different level in terms of skill level versus playing out east, which I knew, but I also knew I was athletic and I could get there if I was given the chance to play with these women who were obviously a step ahead of me. So I actually emailed the coach back, which is weird. Well, it's a little bit my personality, like you never know unless you ask. But I said, "Hey, could you give me just a couple more weeks to train with you guys? And like, let's just see. Like, let's see if I look better in a couple weeks." And I think she was so surprised by that response in terms of just not saying, "All right, thanks for the opportunity." She said, "Sure, you can come play with us for a couple weeks." And I was getting so much better at the end of the month. I remember going to her office. I was like, "Hey, where are we at?" And she was like, "Oh, you're on the team." Like, "You knew that, right?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't
I
really,
do
but
now.
I knew that I could get better." And it's so weird when you think of taking a chance on things, or I always encourage people like reach out to the random connection. You never know, right? Like you never know. I never have a problem with people blind emailing me or reaching out because you just never know. And maybe you can't respond to everyone, but in my case, just pushing back on my coach a little bit worked. And she was like, "Oh, I like that character. I like that attitude. Maybe another coach wouldn't like that," but you never know. So it was kind of all part of the plan. And I'm so grateful for the 4 years I had at BU.
That's awesome. That's really a great perspective on things too, because we find that a lot of people are afraid of that walk-on position, and the fact that you were able to get that push to do it, and then to push even a little bit further to get on the team even after being cut that's excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
And I
motivation
know
right
so
there.
many college football guys who played at small schools and they believed in themselves. Like they had offers, but they were D2, D3, and they were like, "No, I'm good enough." And I always gravitate towards those players because I think that kind of personality is going to take you places, because if you believe in yourself and you know you are good enough and you're able to prove it, I mean, it's just like those are the characters you want on a team. So I tend to tell a lot of walk-on stories for
I
the
love
game.
that. I love it. So was there a time in your career that you weren't hired or people didn't take you as seriously because you were a woman?
I think most recently I did have a situation where I was interviewing for a new job, and they ended up hiring a guy, which he did have more experience in the gig. And I was devastated at the time. Like I thought that this was going to be a new thing that was going to open all these doors. I mean, I have been very lucky in my career that I've been able to get a lot of jobs, or like if I get cut, I'm emailing them back like, "Hey, give me a shot." I didn't get this job. 100%, it was between me and another guy, and they gave it to the guy. And the more I reflected on it, I think that they ultimately probably were going to hire a guy either way, which is interesting because I hadn't really thought about it that way. But also, I wasn't great in the interview, and I wasn't on. It just wasn't my best audition. And we're all self-aware of our performance, right? I'm very critical. I still watch football games back. I watch clips. Like there were moments in my audition that were just not as strong. Could they see potential? Absolutely. It's like I probably even tried my BU lacrosse route. I said, that wasn't my best. I know this game, I know this sport really well, and it's going to be a good fit. Like I no doubt believe I could have done the job well, but ultimately they went with a guy. And, I think maybe that was probably always the safer choice on their end. And I know that he did have more experience than me, so I never viewed it as like a male versus female role. But now watching it and watching a different show with a male, it is interesting. So I'm like, I think the dynamic of a female would have added a nice element to it. But it's so weird because this happened over a year ago at this point. But looking back, I mean, now I'm so happy in what I'm doing. and just thrilled that it didn't happen. It's just funny, like hindsight is just so interesting when you don't get something you think you want or is the right fit, and now you're glad that it didn't work out that way. And those lessons have been important to learn in this career, because you're not always everyone's cup of tea. Like you just like, I think I'm a good broadcaster. I know I'm a good broadcaster, but that doesn't mean everyone else is going to feel the same way. And I've had jobs where executives, one loves me and one really does not like me. I had someone early in my career say, like, I can't even believe this analogy because I still remember it, but it was an executive when I was early starting out. And he said, do you watch, what is the show where they spin around the chair? It's the singing show.
Oh, I know what it is, but I can't think of it.
Do you watch? I don't know. That show where, you have to, you twirl your chair around, and he was like, you don't make me want to turn my chair. And I was like, oh, that's aggressive. But like, I still remember that, and it kind of pushed me and motivated me. So while I didn't impress him, I obviously have done a good job in proving myself to other executives, and I'm motivated by that instead of turned off by the fact that this one person doesn't think I'm great. Okay, well, I'm going to impress someone else, and I know I'm good at this. So it's just, you have to have that inner confidence that not every job is the right job. And I also very much support, like, so many women in this industry. Like, we can't all do the same job. People wonder, like, oh, is it competitive among the females? And I'd say not in my experiences, because that's a win-win. There are a lot of jobs out there, right? It is competitive, but at the same time, I want to see the success of women growing in this world. And thankfully that is the case. There's just so many more women working in sports.
Yeah. That's a great thing that we see more women doing these things. I mean, it stinks that we have to work at it a little harder than some men do, but I mean, in the end, that just shows our work ethic. So what hurdles did you face to get to this point in your career as a full-time moderator on Skip and Shannon's Undisputed?
Well, it's wild too that I've been moderating the show for 4 years now, which I'm like, have I really woken up at 3 and 4 for the last 4 years of my life? I'm still standing, which is good. And knock on wood, I haven't ever missed a show. Even like last night, I was like, did I set my alarm? Just given the fact that I'm pregnant, I'm like, if I'm going to oversleep, it could be now, right?
Yeah,
it hasn't happened.
Definitely.
I think for Undisputed, when I was first getting this job, it was really, it's a unique role, right? Where you have to be confident in being able to kind of end the conversation, move on. And I knew from the beginning, it's a moderator role. Like, it's not Skip, Shannon, and Jenny, but I found that you can still use your voice at times throughout, but at the same time, it's a very structured show. And I've always, while I've loved hosting, I've loved doing sideline reporting, and there's nothing like a live game. And that's the rush I get from being on the field, but I love hosting. And I've been able to do more of that at the World Cup and hosting Undisputed, where you're sitting, on a desk and you're kind of the quarterback of the conversation. You have to make sure the conversation stays on par. And there's so many on-air talent that are just so good at this, and they make it look easy. Kevin Burkhardt is one of the best. He does baseball. Watching him, he makes it look so easy. Carissa Thompson, and a show on Sunday for us. It's so seamless. So I wanted those reps, and Undisputed really felt like a way to get that experience. And it was kind of proving to them that when I can hold my own, which, maybe at too much at times, but at the same time, like, you want to be able to be confident in the role and be able to interject when needed, and also keep the conversation going. So sometimes I wish it was more, because I do have an opinion about sports, and I would air that at times, but it is a show about Skip and Shannon debating, and kind of being that middleman and finding ways to insert my personality, my knowledge. Been a great experience that has no doubt made me a better host. Just the reps of doing live TV every day the last 4 years have been so huge. So it's been a great experience overall as a whole. But I don't know where I'm going to be in the next couple of years, if I'll stay doing that after I have the kid, or if I'm just involved occasionally. I'm definitely going to be hosting more, which is kind of the goal, and staying doing sidelines. So it's exciting with a few changes on the horizon, but it's been a great experience.
Awesome. So during your time on Undisputed, you haven't shied away from speaking your opinion. In several cases, your opinions weren't even given the attention that they probably deserved. But do you feel that that was because of the fact that you were female, because you're the moderator? What, I guess, and how do you handle like those situations as they occur?
Yeah, it's unique because a couple of those situations got a lot of attention this year in ways that I didn't even really expect. But I know it is not because I'm a girl. Like, that's never been a concern of mine. The role itself has had women in that seat, but it's not actually the case. They've had guys filling in. It's more so just the fact that the show is structured to be Skip and Shannon. But I found at times that it was complicated because we would be talking about a college football angle, and I know a lot about college football, or I'm close with this coach, or I'm close with this player. And so at times there were moments where I wanted to have more of an opinion, which it often was a welcome part of I could join the conversation and it would be welcome. It was the moments where it wasn't planned for that to happen that I think that's when some of the attention was received. But at the same time, I wouldn't change any of that, right? Like, my opinion is valued and should be heard. I think it's more so the structure of the show is just so routine in terms of where it's going, that it caught my colleagues off guard. And that's not a bad thing. That just it was live TV, and like that happens sometimes, but I still wouldn't change any of those moments. And I think that's why the hosting reps has given me the confidence to have those moments, to have the confidence to speak up, to have an, at the same time, well aware that it's still, as a moderator, has the limits and boundaries, which I also think I've learned to navigate really well.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I definitely agree that you have, and it's great that we have all these extra platforms that when you don't find the moment you can't speak, you have a way to bring it out and be like, this is what I was trying to say, and
for sure
get it out there in the end.
100%.
All right, I have one final question. What advice do you have for young female athletes facing adversity in the world of athletics, especially because you're a daughter on the way?
Oh, I know, it's wild too. Like, that was my first thought with having a girl. Like, I just want her to have all the confidence in the world. And I think so much of my success and just doing something that I love, right? And it doesn't have to be on air, just in any career, right? Like, that comes from confidence. And that was instilled in me at a very young age. And I'm not saying that if a young athlete doesn't have that, you can't find it, right? But I think focusing on what gives you confidence and surrounding yourself with the people that support you in that, right? I mean, don't surround yourself with people that don't build you up. My family really believed in me. They would say, surround yourself with those good people, have role models to look up to. I had women in broadcast that helped me early on, still, that I keep in touch with today. Find a way to maybe try to convince someone to let you give you a little more time, but also just know that if it's not the right thing right now, it probably in a couple of years you'll look back and go, okay, well, there's a reason why.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And I don't know. I think the narrative of women being outnumbered in any industry, yeah, it's still a thing, but just having the confidence to know that there's no difference, right? And that's always something I've believed in. And maybe because I think I can like beat any guy, I'm like, if you want to go race, or like, do you want to go skate? Like, I'll probably be faster than you. Like, I'm I have this like level of confidence, and that sounded like arrogance, but more so just in a way of, I can hold my own. Yeah. And that's going to give me the confidence to be good at this job. And that's always been something I believe in.
That was definitely important. That confidence is something that falters in a lot of people. And that was the first thing I thought too when I was pregnant. It's like, I want her to feel confident, and I don't want her to question herself. I want her to know she can do whatever it is she wants to put her mind to.
So true.
As long as she's willing to do it and try it.
Yeah, and I guess that I never questioned that as a kid. And I think it made a big difference in how I am. So trying to carry that along. Probably easier said than done, but that's the plan.